Now, as I said, I had 7 properties. I was buying repossessions and doing them up and keeping them. We were remortgaging the money. So my brother-in-law, I lent him £20,000 as a young man to get his first property. He bought a property. He said it was £80,000. He bought it. He put £20,000 down, £60,000. He spent 9 months doing it up. He sold it 9 months later. Yeah. So he buys the property. He said he earned £20,000 a year, but really he earned 12. So he buys it, he gets a mortgage, he sells it, the mortgage company are paid back.
This is a story which I think we're all familiar with. Tommy Robinson's claim that he went to jail for mortgage fraud for lending his brother £20,000 for a mortgage and not disclosing the fact on the mortgage application form, along with a few other details besides. He sought to appeal the confiscation order of £125,000, which was the total value of the property in question. He'd hoped they would only take away his £45,000 profit, but they took away the full £125,000 value. This was unfortunate for him, because it would cost him an awful lot more money, but it was fortunate for us because it yielded this judgment on case mine, which includes the background facts from which we learn what actually happened. This is all fairly short, and I will be jumping in along the way. Tommy had pleaded guilty to 2 counts of conspiracy to commit fraud by misrepresentation, counts 3 and 5 on the indictment. That is 2 deposits for 2 mortgages. What is this mystery second one that he's never mentioned? Although he was charged with 2 conspiracies, the overall reality was that they involved a course of conduct organised by himself and involving others in relation to 1 property in Luton, 14 Shingle Close. On both occasions, the applications for mortgages which were made had been processed by a co-accused, a mortgage broker called Rothschild. There are 4 people in total involved in this. Our friend, obviously, his brother Stephen Voles, a bent mortgage broker by the name of Deborah Rothschild, and Mystery Woman X, who we will get to a bit further along because she first appears in the second part. 7. So far as count 3 was concerned, the position was this. On 3rd of February 2009, a mortgage application in the name of Stephen Voles, his brother-in-law, was received by the Abbey National. On the face of it, Voles sought a loan by way of mortgage in the sum of £60,000 to purchase 14 Shingle Close, Luton. It appears that that property had been the subject of repossession proceedings and was on the market for £80,000. It was represented to the Abbey that £20,000 by way of deposit was to come from his savings. Tommy disclosed that Voles was employed as a plumber in a partnership run by him and his stepfather. It has since been shown that financial information provided to the Abbey as to Voles' income and as to the source of the deposit were false. It is unnecessary to give the details. That was accepted to be the case. The deposit money was in fact provided by Tommy, not by Voles. He transferred a total of £22,000 into Voles' account. Prior to those payments, Voles himself had little more than £1,000 in his account. In the result, the Abbey advanced the sum total of £61,495. The Shingle Close property was then registered in Voles' sole name. It was common ground that had these false representations not been made, the Abbey would not have advanced any sum to Voles, and the property therefore could not have been purchased in his name. And these first details he almost honestly lays out. The house was actually sold after 2 months. Do you remember that 9 months thing?
He spent 9 months doing it up. He sold it 9 months later.
You'll see that at the top of the bit, which I'm going to come to in a second. A good reason for saying that would be that you can credibly claim to have fully done up a house after 9 months, whereas 2 months does not give you too much time to do anything, and it frankly looks rather suspect. Apart from that, what he has said on many occasions is corroborated by all that, but only as far as it goes, and the enterprise's seeming legitimacy at this point does not hold up as we carry on. Paragraph 8. The offending which was the subject of count 5 involved this. In June 2009, by which time Voles had owned 14 Shingle Close for a period of only about 2 months, a woman named Lisa Moore began the process of obtaining a mortgage from the Halifax with a view to purchasing the property for £120,000. This is all new. The mortgage was requested in February, the paperwork would have been sorted by April, and the house was then sold again in June, just 2 months later. The sum total of what the lad has ever told us was that the house was sold 9 months later. It was sold just 2 months later for quite a spectacular price and a lot more besides. It is not in dispute that that figure was a significant overvalue. It did not represent the true value of the property at the time. We don't know the true value. 2 months isn't particularly long to do anything at all to a house, so it probably still was worth the same £80,000. And assuming that is the case, then I can see a way to make all this make sense. If it was in fact worth an additional £20,000, All this looks very odd. Let's carry on. At the time the application was made, Moore had neither the capital for the deposit nor the income to justify the loan sought by way of mortgage from the Halifax. At all events, Moore provided details in support of her application for a mortgage which included entirely false representations as to her true income and the nature of her true work. Further, it was Tommy who provided money, $20,000, towards the purchase price, of which $18,000 was used as a deposit. So you can see that Lisa Moore in this second part is a carbon copy of Stephen Voles in the first part. The same deposit amount provided in the same covert fashion by the same person using the same fake application details. It's all the same. So as they go on to say, it's most likely that these are stooges, Stephen Voles and Lisa Moore, that Tommy used to enable the process. It emerged that he had made 4 separate payments into Moore's account for this purpose. In the result, the Halifax advanced the sum of $102,000 to Moore. She subsequently let out the property before she ultimately sold it on to a bona fide third-party purchaser on 26th of February 2014 for the sum of $125,000, on which occasion the Halifax loan was discharged. It was the prosecution case that Moore and Voles had been part of an overall conspiracy along with Tommy and Rothschild. It may well be, we do not know, that Voles and Moore were simply stooges or nominees for Tommy. 2 months after buying the house for $80,000, not 9 months, they sell it for $120,000. It was legitimately worth that much around 5 years later in 2014. So as things turned out, they fast-forwarded property inflation of around 5 years into 2 months. But he also shovelled out an additional £20,000 deposit. Whatever the actual value of the house was, he was clearly using a stooge to pay the inflated price, because a legitimate purchaser wouldn't pay a price which was $50,000 more than the actual value. So here is my shot at making sense of all this, which requires that the house price had stayed the same, $80,000, after those 2 months, which is probably the case. Scenario 1, house value $80,000. Sale based on inflated price of $120,000. Repay mortgage minus deposits to both Voles and Moore, $20,000 profit. Sale based on genuine price $80,000. Repay mortgage minus deposit to Voles and no deposit to Moore, that's 0 profit. So if the value is $80,000, the conspiracy yields a profit. Second scenario, house value $100,000. The first bit based on the inflated price, everything the same, and $20,000 profit. Sale based on genuine price $100,000. Repay mortgage minus deposit to Voles and no deposit to Moore, $20,000 profit. So if the house value is $100,000 after 2 months, which seems very unlikely, it would make as much sense to sell it on the legitimate market. That is a possible explanation for all this, to grab a quick profit on the basis of an inflated price that only a stooge would pay. And then they sell it for $125,000 in 2014, back goes the $100,000 mortgage to the bank, £25,000 profit plus the original $20,000, that's $45,000 profit, which was what Tommy had hoped they would only confiscate as opposed to the full $125,000 value. Of course, if they'd hung on to the thing simply for those 5 years, they could have not involved Lisa Moore at all, had the same profit, and had one less charge to deal with. In any event,
I lent him £20,000 as a young man to get his first property. He bought a property, he spent 9 months doing it up, he sold it 9 months later.
This was not about giving a hand up to his brother-in-law. We know that because we know it involved an awful lot more than that, all of which was a carbon copy of the brother-in-law shenanigans, and none of which he ever mentioned, which in itself tells you it's dodgy. And I'm sure nobody is going to suggest he had these kind of family charitable feelings towards this Lisa Moore character. And also, you don't lie about the ownership period. 2 months, not 9 months. If it's reasonable, you lie about it because you want to hide the fact, because it's dodgy. This was financial skullduggery. This was not an innocent loan. So here are 2 objections. Nobody lost any money. Banks don't like mortgage application exaggerations because it increases the chance of bad debt, repossessions, and all the nuisance and cost that involves them, which is fair. So the mortgage fraud charge is reasonable. It's a bit like saying, well, look, officer, I didn't go through the windscreen, so who cares if I wasn't wearing a seatbelt? The point of having to wear a seatbelt is that it decreases the chance of you going through the windscreen, even if on any given occasion you don't go through the windscreen. Second objection. His sentence was disproportionate. Yes, we can probably agree on that. The real point here is different. For the haters, it's going to be all about fraud. Yeah, Tommy Robinson fraud's the big shock there. For the fans, and that is lots of the people watching this video. This is more lying from Tommy. He wasn't giving a hand up to his brother-in-law. He was using people in a scheme to get mortgages which he could not get for whatever reason by himself. And it just adds to the list of lies of simply the things I'm aware of. There may well be more. Mortgage fraud dresses up a lot of financial skullduggery as one honest loan. Day of Freedom invites Islamic activist Ali Dawah, changes his mind and blames his female assistant and throws her to the wolves for good measure. Cambridgeshire Police, legitimate pub clearing operation he never mentions. Jamal Hijazi libel 1, no mention of the McLaren family connection. Jamal Hijazi libel 2, no mention in his film Silenced of the judgment being free to view online or that the evidence he showed in the film had all been scrutinised and rejected by the court. It's just more lies, more and more of the same. The link to that judgment which I read from CaseMine will be in the description of this video if you're watching on YouTube, and it'll be in a follow-up comment if you're watching on Twitter.